Call to order the meeting of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District Board of Managers, January 25th, 2018. All managers are present except Manager Rogness and Manager Shackleton. Seeing no members of the public, we move to item 3, approval of the agenda. I want to note 2 changes I'm aware of. One is that we are striking item 10.1. This permit will come back to us at a subsequent meeting. And we will be adding a closed session at the end of the meeting. And would you state the purpose of that closed session, Mr. Smith?
Madam President, we'd request a closed session for the purposes of providing legal advice on the Minnesota ice claim.
Okay, I have that. Are there any other changes to the agenda? May I have a motion?
Move approval.
Manager Miller and seconded by Manager Loftus. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is where we get to go to new staff introduction.
President White, Board of Managers, I am pleased to announce one of our newest employees here at the Watershed District. Kim Laveau joined us last week as the Engagement and Education Coordinator, and I'll have Kim join me at the table to give a few welcoming remarks to you as well.
Thank you. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you. Just to, I guess, tell you a little bit about myself. Prior to starting here at the Watershed District, I worked for 11 years at a local environmental organization as a senior program coordinator, and that was with Clean Water Action. And I was also the organizer for their statewide coalition called Healthy Legacy. And prior to that, I lived and worked in Chicago for 14 years and worked at a variety of organizations doing organizing work. So a common focus of my work has been bringing together community members and stakeholders to pass policies and engage in other strategies to improve their communities and the environment. So I very much look forward to working with all of you and with the community on advancing the goals of the Watershed District.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions for Ms. LeBeau? Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good luck. It's where I normally talk about eliminating jobs, but you know, it's no longer funny.
On the consent agenda, we have approval of the January 11th, 2018 board minutes, approval of the general checking account, surety account, and 325 Blake Road checking account, and approval of resolution 18-006, the filing of the MCWD 2018 pay equity report. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Manager Becker, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Olson, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Since I have been out of commission, I have no report to give. I just wanted to say that I want to offer my post hoc ex officio vote for the comp plan. I was really sorry not to be able to be here and vote for approval of the comp plan. Policy and Planning Committee report, Manager Miller.
We met earlier this evening, and we had an update on 325 Blake Road and decommissioning the building and the process that we're going to be going through to select potential master developers for the site, as well as HR plan update that was a brief update that was presented this evening.
Thank you. The upcoming meetings and events are, as noted in the agenda. The Citizens Advisory Committee meeting is at a different time in February. It's on the 21st rather than the second Tuesday, and the assigned manager is Manager Shackleton.
Do we have a backup?
For Manager Shackleton?
If
I'd be happy to do it if he's not available.
Thank you.
Item 11.1, election of board officers and appointment of committee assignments. Election of officers can be by motion or by nomination. I'll open nominations for president.
I move Manager White for president.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I would nominate Manager Shackleton as Vice President, or move him as President.
Second?
Manager Becker, any other nominations? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Office of Treasurer. Well,
I'll
I can do it.
Manager Dick Miller.
I'll second. Any other nominations? Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Office of Secretary. I-
I nominate Kurt Roggins.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Looks like the slate returns. Thank you very much. The same is true of the committee assignments. The committee assignments will remain as they were last year with the same committee chairs, so that we have managers Loftus and Becker and Olson. Gosh, I didn't think I needed to write this down, but apparently I do. On operations and programs with Manager Loftus chairing, Manager Miller and Shackleton and Rognus on planning and policy with Manager Miller chairing. I believe those are subject to board approval, so if I could have a motion.
So moved. Manager
Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Loftus. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 11.2, Mr. Lochner, CAC appointments.
Good evening, President White, Board of Managers. In your packet, you will note that it is this time where we consider our annual slate of candidates for the 2018 Citizen Advisory Committee. As you note from past conversations with the board, on October 23rd, my colleague James Whisper came before you along with myself and talked about the Citizen Advisory Committee and looked at their focus and their connection to the U.S. Board of Managers as well as our future direction with the Watershed District. There were several other follow-up meetings with staff, and we had a focus group with representatives of Citizen Advisory Committee members as well as Manager Miller and Olson at a focus group in the early part of this year to again talk about how we can improve our communications across all groups and further align ourselves looking forward with the further direction of the district. Last week, had the opportunity to meet with a group of staff as well as Managers Miller and White to look at the slate of candidates. And as you see in your packet, this year we had 26 individuals that applied for the Citizen Advisory Committee. 14 of those were returning members, and we had 12 new individuals that expressed interest in serving on the committee. As we're looking at the future direction of the Citizen Advisory Committee, we realize that this is an ongoing process to look at how we recruit individuals, what is their role in how they are connected with the district. And so this is kind of a process improvement that we continue to work on. In addition, as new individuals come on board, as well as existing members continue to serve on the CAC, we want to make sure that there's a strong orientation and education plan so that they are well informed of the district, our goals and mission, and are well connected to our programs here. So your task tonight is to look at the individuals that have applied for the Citizen Advisory Committee this upcoming year. In your packet, you'll notice that there was a memo with 16 individuals that were recommended for appointment. And I'll leave it up to the Board of Managers to further discuss the appointment selection for the upcoming calendar year.
Thank you. And we also have a list of all applicants
Correct.
in that same packet, which is
Correct.
good.
I move the recommendation of the appointment of, I believe that there's, how many members, 16 now?
There'll be 16.
16, so
total
we're
members.
reducing the size and reappointed all those that requested reappointment?
14.
Yeah.
14 of the,
Yep.
and then two new members. And because there's going to be a new interface between the CAC and the committees, it's yet to be determined how we're going to be doing that and what kind of sharing of responsibility for reviewing and certain things. But one of the things that were talked about was the rules, and which would be a major piece of work to do. We're not really sure, the board has to discuss that yet, but that's one of the kinds of things that we're thinking about, is more meaningful experience than now that they don't review the grants, and that we eliminated that program. We really want to make sure that they have some efforts that are a meaningful contribution to the movement of the watershed district. So I guess I already moved to.
Thank you. Is there a second to Manager Miller's
Second.
motion? Manager Olson. Any further discussion or questions? Manager Loftus.
I was going to ask Darren, I really appreciate the 14 people who are willing to return. So I appreciate their service. Of the 4 that were moving on, I know people's lives get busy and different things come up, but were there any red flags or notes from the 4 people who moved on that we need to be aware of, or was it all internal or personal reasons for leaving?
Manager Loftus, I assume you're referring to the 4 individuals who served in 2017 that chose not to reapply. A couple of those individuals, had been on the CAC for a number of years, and like with any volunteers, there becomes a time where their needs are met, or there's a time where they want to pursue another opportunity. And that was my perception of all the individuals that chose to move on. Either their life has changed and demands have changed, just like all our personal lives and professional lives. And so it wasn't necessarily the assignment of the Citizen Advisory Committee. They weren't dissatisfied. It was mainly external factors, or they had served for a number of years and they just thought there would be an opportunity for a new community member to serve in that role.
Great. Thank you for checking in with them.
That's a good question.
Understanding
Thank you.
And all board of managers, I mean, the Citizen Advisory Committee, I think the thing to recognize, these are volunteers, and that they all come to this committee with different interests and motivations. And so that's a challenge and an opportunity to look at how do we make sure those needs and motivations are met, and how do they work with us as an organization, as a watershed district, and so that their needs are met, but also our needs are met as a watershed district. And that's something we want to continue to grow and improve on down the road.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah, thank you. And then you will be keeping your seat for the next item. Resolution 1800, I beg your pardon, 007, the Freshwater Society contract. I heard Jen Cater on radio today.
Board of Managers, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the contract for the Watershed Association Initiative, and the contract is between the Freshwater Society and the district, and so it'd be for the 2018 calendar year, and the total request for that contract is $25,000. And just to give you a little history of the Watershed Association Initiative, maybe to take a step back, we did discuss this issue at one of the most recent committee meetings, and our liaison with the Freshwater Society, Jen Cater, was present to give a little bit more insight on her work with this initiative in the Watershed District. Provide a little context of WAI. It's been part of district programming for 12 years now. And there's been a pretty dramatic evolution of this program over those years, not only in terms of the programming, but also in the last few years, we've had the opportunity to work with Ms. Jen Cater, who's done an exceptional job of really connecting with our local organizations. Primarily they're lake associations, but occasionally there is organizations that are oriented along Minnehaha Creek and other water bodies. So originally the program was really focused on getting these groups formed and working on lake management plans. But now we've seen there's increased demands for really helping to build capacity within these organizations, to provide support at many levels. There are still new organizations that come online that do require assistance from time to time. But as you can see, with the supporting existing groups, it's that capacity building, providing them additional content, whether it's water quality information or whether it's just more support in terms of leadership development or managing members or goal setting. And so the continued goal with WAI is really helping those organizations, helping them stay focused, but in terms of their connection to the Watershed District, is helping to make sure that they're helping us further advance our goals. With the WAI, we've had a number of conversations among staff to look at how does this program support staff, and we've also had some meetings with the board as well. And so when we looked at our strategic planning process, WAI was one of those programs that was really examined for what is its role and what are the outcomes that we are seeing as part of this program. And some of the challenges is we have demands with these organizations as they work with their local communities, and as they ask things of staff is how we can further focus those groups and make sure that their contacts are coming through hopefully just one individual or a couple individuals versus them contacting multiple staff members across the organization. We've looked at the role of the WAI organizer and basically making an individual like that person more connected with us, and that includes more face time with staff, more kind of updates and meetings with us, so we can have a better understanding what are the regular contacts that organizer is making, what is the content of those conversations, and so that we can continue to move forward from both parties. And then also just receiving regular outcomes, or what are the kind of progress reports of this program. So previously, this program was, the directive was given at the beginning of the year, and there wasn't a lot of check-ins until, towards the end of the calendar year. But we plan to change that by having more of a consistent communication with the organizer, with myself as being the key staff contact, and then also regular check-ins with all our departments here at the district.
I got a question.
Manager Miller.
We've had this for 11 years, and it is the same amount every year?
It's actually, when I joined the district, it was close to 45,000.
Okay. It seems to me we've really spent a lot of money on this over the years, and there's I think there's really a need to have closer attention to it, like you're suggesting, because once a year report in and with the request for additional funding, it doesn't seem to me to be a good use of funds, because I have a hard time looking at the 10 lakes that have been organized and seeing our return on investment. But I think the format that you're proposing is going to be much more productive and accountable than we've had in the past, because it's like a half a staff person we could be doing this rather than consulting. Maybe there's a good reason to have an outside agency doing it for the neutral kind of position they take, but I'm not sure we're getting, up to this point, I'm not sure we've gotten return on our dollars. That's just my gut feeling without really knowing anybody from a lake association or anything like that, but I don't have any firsthand knowledge.
If you want to respond at this time, we can do that, or you can finish your presentation and we'll come back.
Manager Miller, Board of Managers, I appreciate your comments, Manager Miller, and that's something, like I mentioned, we do plan to have more regular check-ins with the program and with the organizer, just to make sure there's continuous progress reports and that we have a firm understanding, and it's really a two-way communication, and so that the organizer is well informed of our programming here at the district and has regular updates on our initiatives, and so they can bring that information back to the lake associations. But then it's also the organizer, kind of regular updates back to staff, and so we can keep a regular tabs on what's going on. In relation to the potential, there's both advantages and challenges to a third-party individual working with a program like this. In talking with our liaison, Jen Cater, as a third party, they're able to have some conversations with these lake groups and initiate kind of a working relationship without that district label. And it helps to, in many cases, those lake groups to open up more and to trust in that individual. There's also the challenges in that it is a third party and they may not be as closely tied or have the best understanding of the district. And those are things that by having more regular check-ins, we hope to have, Jen Cater is a very competent individual and she's very knowledgeable of the district, but we want to improve her knowledge and comfort with explaining our mission and approach. So just to continue on with just my last few comments here, through conversations with staff and looking at our strategic planning direction, where there's many things that we're planning for the upcoming year, is, as I mentioned, more consistent communication, more involvement by staff, and just continuous looking at the integration of this program with our goals and direction of the organization. I will be the lead contact, as always, with this position, and there's also plans for having the WAI organizer actually have office hours in the district, perhaps once or twice a month, and so there can be structured FaceTime with staff along the way. And I think the last bullet item is having an internal staff team further guide and direct WAI. So as we see that there may be an emerging need with a specific lake, we can help direct the organizer to a specific area as needed. And these are some of the continued activities that we're planning, as I mentioned in the previous remarks. And with that, I'd like to entertain any additional questions on the Watershed Association initiative and the continuation of this contract for the upcoming calendar year.
Before we go further, may I have a motion to approve the resolution 18007?
So moved.
I'll take Mr. Manager Olson's motion and Manager Becker's second. Now, Manager Olson, your question.
Just a short one here. How do we pay out the $25,000? Is it billed to us upon completion?
It is. Manager Olson, I will look at the scope of services, and basically the way it is outlined for this upcoming year is 50% will be issued at February 1st. An additional 40% will be issued at July 1st, and the remaining 10% would be issued at December 1st.
Okay.
Manager Becker?
I'm in support of this because you're taking a proactive approach to improving the value to the district, and you're not allowing it to go on automatic pilot. That's important for long-term investments like this. We need to evaluate on a continuous basis how they're serving us and bring that back to the board.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think there's a straight line of text at the end of the resolution that should be stricken. It repeats the two paragraphs above. All right.
Manager White, what was that?
At the end of the resolution, there's the last sentence that begins, "Now therefore be it resolved." I think that's just extra.
Okay.
There's a repeat of what's above. Any other comments? All those in favor? Oh, Manager Loftus, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was my first experience with the program, and I appreciated Jen, what was her last name? I'm sorry.
Cater.
Cater, thank you. I appreciated Ms. Cater attending our committee meeting, and I was impressed with her and what she's able to assist the lake associations with. So I'm supportive of the program as well.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Lochner. Item 11.4, Resolution 18008, Carver County Finance Banking RFP. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, President White and managers. I am seeking authorization to issue a request for proposals for banking services for short-term financing in support of the Carver County Finance Agreement. This RFP was brought before you on January 11th by James Whisker. And at that time, the board didn't suggest any revisions or have any major changes, so we are seeking to approve that tonight. This RFP is a component of the Master Finance Agreement, which was approved by the board as well as Carver County's board back in October. And the Master Finance Agreement will support capital project implementation in the 6 Mile Creek Halstead Banks of Watershed. The finance agreement provides for up to $25 million in long-term financing through Carver County's issuance of general obligation bonds, which will be backed by the district's levy. And the agreement as structured also outlines the district's intent to issue temporary obligations in the short term that can provide immediate capital financing to then be rolled into those general obligation bonds. So we developed this RFP in consultation with our financial advisors, with bond counsel, as well as with legal counsel, and we are prepared to issue the RFP that's in your packet to seek that banking arrangement. With the board's approval, we would anticipate releasing the RFP early next week, and then would be bringing back our recommended selection at the end of February. The one caveat on the timeline is that we are still waiting for Carver County to execute the Master Finance Agreement. I don't believe there would be a legal reason to wait necessarily, but perhaps just by way of procedure, we'll hopefully get that executed before releasing the RFP, and James and I will make a determination on that when he returns early next week. We may still be able to hit the end of February. If not, it would just sort of be pushed to early first meeting in March in that case. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the
So moved.
resolution?
Second.
Motion and second. Questions for Ms. Brown?
I'd just point out that you made the presentation like you were a financial advisor. You know, correct term and everything was very well done.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Trying on a new hat, I guess.
Well, we've been well versed in the progress of this as it's gone along, so we've had great information. Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11.5 is Resolution 18-009, conveyancing of right-of-way. Mr. Heyman.
Good evening, Chair White, managers. Before you this evening, seeking authorization to convey right-of-way easements on 3 district parcels, 325 Blake Road, 415 Blake Road, and 427 Blake Road, to the City of Hopkins at market value for the reconstruction of Blake Road. And we've gone through a variety of these presentations before and in closed session to discuss, but I will just sort of recap some of the information that's in your packet and get everyone sort of back up to speed. So there was the design that was developed, and it includes an alternative for on-street parking. But the overall design for Blake Road was sort of created through a cooperative process back in 2014 that included the City of Edina, St. Louis Park, Hopkins, Hennepin County, MnDOT, the district, and some others, because Blake Road actually is a county road, even though it's only a county road for the portion that's from Highway 7 to Excelsior, and extends up into St. Louis Park and down into Edina. So the proposal that they're moving forward with contains some of the information that came from that. Some of it's being handled by member cities, but overall the road will be reconstructed by the City of Hopkins with funds from Hennepin County, and then eventually turned to the City of Hopkins. So they're sort of leading the process, which is why the easements are being acquired by the city and not Hennepin County. So we did receive offers. Maybe I should just note that, and I did mention in the packet, there is an on-street parking alternative that was developed based on some recommendations by the district. And there's an opportunity for that to be added by the developer, potentially as a bid alternate or as an add. to the overall road project if they were to choose to, being that we should have a developer on well in advance of the road reconstruction. So it would require some obviously changes to some of the easements and other entitlements on the parcel, but it is an opportunity. So the acquisition itself is simply for the right-of-way that's necessary for the road reconstruction, which on our particular parcels includes trail and utility needs. The road itself, the road right-of-way, or the road itself, not the right-of-way, will actually be reduced in size from a 5-lane to a 4-lane divided with a variety of new landscaping and streetscaping, things of that nature. So regarding the acquisition, we reviewed that with our appraisal team and with city representatives, and are before you today with more of that information. We talked a little bit about in committee the need for the building to be out of the way for the road right-of-way for a variety of reasons, but some of the main ones being so the road isn't deferred on this particular section in front of 325 Blake Road and can move forward as part of the project, with the project scheduled to start in the fall of 2018. So as I mentioned, we reviewed with the city group, their appraiser, as well as had our appraisal team from Shanahan review the appraisals and meet with them to discuss further. I provided you a letter via email. The recommendation from our consultant at Shanahan was to not do separate appraisals. They felt that the valuations were all really within striking distance of what they would have expected to see had they been contracted to do the work. There were some inconsistencies, but that's not out of the ordinary given the subjective nature of appraising a parcel that doesn't have sort of final entitlements and other elements determined yet. And so we did talk with Hopkins about the difference of opinion, and they understood, but they still were quite comfortable. And one of the reasons we're before you this evening is the city is in the process of determining which parcels they need to go into condemnation on, because they're having a couple of parcels they're having some difficulties with, and so we wanted to make sure they were aware that these parcels weren't, should not be advanced, and that if the board so chooses to authorize the conveyance. So regarding the 3 parcels, there are temporary and permanent easements on 2 of the 3, and 1 is just temporary. This just sort of lays out the size of the impact. The biggest impact obviously being on 325 Blake Road, and for the temporary easement, I do want to note that the temporary easement consist of some additional grading into the site, and that was to avoid any sort of retaining wall that might be necessary, knowing that the future developer, and we talked through at length with the city on this, that they're going to come in and do some either below ground or want to bring that site up. So there was a general level of comfort that some of that temporary grading that would be feathered into the site wouldn't have an overall impact on the property. There are a couple of trees as well, and that's what's listed as the other. There's no certainty that those will be impacted, but if they do, those 2 trees do need to go, we'd be compensated for those. The other thing I do want to note is staff in the request for board action, you'll note that we're recommending that we provide the temporary easements on the 2 cottageville parcels, 415 and 427, at no cost to the city. There are no there's no risk or no cost to the district for that work being done, and everything will be restored to its original condition. And being that it's a sort of a partner project, we thought that made a lot of sense. So although this indicates what the MOAs, the Memorandum of Agreement, state, we would request that be changed if the board agreed with the staff recommendation. So each parcel will have 2 documents. They're in your packet in their draft form, really to sort of illustrate the nature of them. Both of them need a little bit of tweaking. It's nothing substantial, I would say, just some clarity to some of the language, and as well as if, depending on the temporary easements, if we need to make some changes to the dollar figures. But those will be, the MOAs will be signed for each parcel as part of the transaction. The easements themselves will be a permanent and temporary, and the permanent being for the trail and utility use on all 2 parcels. The temporary on all 3 just for construction activities. And again, we will work through those revisions, and obviously the way that it's set up, we structured the resolution to state the requirements of the easements, so you know what that will be, and that will not change. We just want to get some clarity on breaking out the permanent versus temporary easements and some of the language. So again, staff's recommendation this evening is to authorize the execution of those agreements and easements for each of the 3 parcels, subject to the conditions that are listed in the resolution. And as I noted, As it's written in the resolution in its current form, it does include removing the temporary easement considerations for the two cottageville parcels.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Manager Becker, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Olson, questions for Mr. Heyman? Manager Olson.
Mike, in the development itself, will those roads be private or will they be city?
Manager Olson, managers, that hasn't been determined yet. There are conversations about that, and it's actually discussed a little bit in the RFQ. The city has stated that they will consider those being municipal roads. The development community has, I think, has expressed an interest in having them be municipal if there's some flexibility as to what the roads would be. The municipal roads would be a little bit wider than they might want. And so that's certainly going to be part of, as we've discussed, a part of the master PUD process. So after the RFQ and we start to negotiate what the master development agreement looks like, we would definitely be looking at that or be involved in those conversations, as well as the tax increment financing that may be needed to help construct some of that infrastructure.
So there theoretically could be more permanent easements that would have to be considered in the future, should that?
Yeah, I would,
determined?
manager also managers, that would be something that would be negotiated with the landowner at that time, presuming it's not the district any longer.
Yep.
Thank you. Other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Under discussion items 12.1, Arden Park Design Briefing, Ms. Clark.
Good evening, Chair White, Board of Managers. I'm here to provide...
Looks like an Easter scene on the...
I'm here to provide an update.
I was going to say, I thought that waterfall was much smaller in Arden Park. It's frozen right now.
Come on, cut her some slack here. She's got a report to give.
It's quite the amenity.
Noted. This is our first check-in and our last stop on our first check-in of the design development from Arden Park concept plan into design detail. And Katre, the City of Edina Parks and Recreation Director, was planning on attending tonight. And would have come despite her illness, but I assured her I have it covered. I also want to acknowledge that Laura Damiancic from our group is here tonight, and she's on our project team as we are kind of cross-training in project management, but also as we have learned in these types of projects, using her expertise on advising not only design development, but how the operations and maintenance plan and the land stewardship plan that follows is integrated and thought about during these initial design phases. So she is here and may come in useful for questions later on. Tonight I'm going to review the design development process and touch on our design goals and most of all provide a briefing on where we're at with the 30% design and talk about next steps. First, the process. Coming out of concept design approval, it was really important to City Council, particularly as it is to the district, but Council directed that staff develop a process that continues to keep the public informed and engaged as design develops. So staff proposed a process and council actually approved a formal process that has check-in points with the public, Parks Commission, City Council, and Board of Managers at this early stage. And then again at 60 and 90% where there is decision points for the board and council. The information provided tonight was provided at a public open house on January 9th. That was held in the lobby at City Hall outside council chambers. It was a 2-hour block set up really informally. We estimate 75 to 100 people attended. Laura and I were both there from staff, as well as Ann Cottray, the Director of Parks, and Ross Bittner, the Water Resources Engineer, and then our lead consultant, Jonathan Kusa. We stood at exhibits that I'll walk through with you later, showing the proposed new creek alignment, our natural resource strategy and design goals, stormwater management concepts, and then an updated park concept. And I'm excited to report that the vibe and the feedback was positive and supportive from the group by and large, with just a couple of exceptions to that. So we're excited to be working together with the city on this project. The design development goals, we worked with the, this is a partnership with the district and the city, producing this master plan that integrate water resource goals as well as city goals for their parks, which do overlap with our water resource goals. The concept plan we produced together removes that dam at West 54th Street, which was how we got started looking at this opportunity. It increases access and recreational opportunities, trail connections throughout the park, provides regional stormwater management, and provides for updated park facilities. So the concept that we're working from was developed over about a 12-month public process, and culminated with the approvals of the district and the city moving forward together in partnership to develop design drawings for the park. The design goals based on that year of feedback. This is one of the exhibits that we had for the public open house, are shown above, but by an overwhelming theme was maintain the rustic character of the park. They like what the park is today and that kind of organic experience it offers. Recreation and visual and physical access to the creek are goals. Facility upgrades. Public safety, there's a portage currently across West 54th Street that goes away as part of this project. And then one of our primary goals is improved biological and geological function of the creek and the corridor and regional stormwater management. So that's where we're jumping off to into the design phase. For the 30% design briefing, I'll review a new creek alignment, an updated concept plan, talk about the stormwater management concepts we've developed, and the natural resource enhancement strategies. First, the updated creek alignment. The 2017 creek alignment that's in the concept plan that was approved by the agencies is the lighter colored of the two swooshes across this aerial photo. It was designed mostly to try to mimic one, historic conditions and optimal form and function of a healthy creek. Responding to feedback from the community, one in particularly was tree preservation, preserving specimen trees and overall avoiding tree loss, and then maximizing the use of the open green space in the north end of the park. We modified the alignment, and that's that brighter blue swash. Here's the existing and updated concept plan, which I'll just walk you through. The concept plan that was approved is on your right. You'll notice the updated creek alignment. Other updates with respect to creek alignment, we had proposed in concept an adjustment to the creek adjacent to private property north of Arden Park. And based on a preliminary meeting out there with 5 homeowners that have kind of retaining walls along the creek that would be affected, there was one family that was moderately supportive and 4 that were adamantly opposed to pursuing that work. So it's staff's recommendation that we don't invest further in pursuing work in that north part of the creek. The updated concept plan then does not show that work. It shows the new stream alignment, some modified trail alignments, and to point out, based on a field visit, we looked at where grades make sense for connections for ADA, for example, and also looked at including ADA accessibility to what will be a fishing access on the south side of 54th. The connection from Brookview down through the park, the city is looking at kind of an arterial connection that will be maintained in the winter as well and be plowed. So it's a larger 8-foot trail, and this is a really steep slope, as you might recall. So we did some field fitting of how that can come through a stand of oaks, but still be maybe not ADA, but much more accessible than it is today. And then stormwater, I'll get into in more detail on the next slide, but in the original concept plan, we were looking at the opportunity for 4 different spots. A small, like 5-acre drainage area south of 54th. Another one here in the southwest corner off of Brookview. And these 2 blue blobs in the north part of the creek. Moving forward, we're looking at continuing with design on about an 83-acre drainage area to the north as an opportunity for treatment with a big pipe that comes into the creek right at this location. And then grabbing the smaller area of street runoff that goes into the creek untreated. We found that there is an existing treatment manhole structure where the pipe comes in here, as well as some site limitations to doing anything above and beyond that with the creek and existing wetland in that location. The discharge to the north on the west side of the creek comes out in the woods and then has a preferential flow path that's carved to the creek. But the pipe sits quite a ways back. Because of its location in the woods, we're looking at stabilizing the flow path with minimal equipment, but not getting back there to do larger disturbance. So the stormwater concepts focus on this large drainage area and then this piece to the south. Before I look at those concepts, I'll point out on this updated concept plan the overview of stormwater management, which is underground treatment and then 2 drainage swales shown in this cross-hatched around the green space, which would be above ground and vegetated. The concepts for what those look like, underground initially, similar to what we did at Cottageville Park. That takes the first 1 inch of runoff from this 84-acre drainage area and removes about 43 pounds of phosphorus and a pretty significant sediment load that's untreated today. Using the swales, which these are example images of what above ground treatment swales look like. The community reaction was positive with no preference for an aesthetic here, but that would treat up to the first 3 inches of runoff from the drainage area, incorporating those swales. What we're going to look at during design is the opportunity to enhance the treatment with different types of filter. This summer, we're going to be monitoring for E. coli to explore if there's an opportunity for E. coli treatment, if that is a source here. And then looking at enhanced phosphorus treatment options within these swales that could be demonstrated in nature, as well as provide additional treatment. The swale on the bottom side also provides a high flow bypass to keep the pavilion, our future pavilion park shelter, dry, whereas the bridge restriction and how water works here now, this would flood in really, really high events. So we're looking at how those really high flows are managed through our stormwater system and still work with the park. The natural resource enhancement strategies was also presented at our public open house and discussed. But this is speaking to the creek corridor more broadly through Arden Park, the wetland and floodplain and upland enhancement strategies. As we look at this restoration opportunity, the riparian corridor health, particularly in urban areas, is lacking and really important as part of this restoration. So buckthorn management and invasive species management is a primary target, as well as just improved diversity and preservation of specimen trees, looking at unhealthy trees, cottonwoods in some cases, that might be a public safety hazard, and taking those down. One thing that's been discussed as part of our technical design progression through our team meetings, brought up by the city forester who's on our team, is ash tree management. Of the little over 600 trees shown in the green X's throughout the park property, about 100 of them are ash. And ash tree management, because of emerald ash borer, is a kind of a policy question throughout the Twin Cities, and from Hennepin County to local communities, everybody's got kind of a different approach on how active they're pursuing ash tree management. Edina does not have emerald ash borer. They don't have an active management plan right now for managing ash trees. Arden Park poses the question, you know, how do we consider ash tree management in the context of a large project coming through? And we took feedback from Parks and Council on that question, and the opinions are a bit mixed, from let's use this opportunity to take out the ash, to let's look at how we're managing ash also throughout the city, to more let's think of kind of a hybrid of where there's you know, an opportunity that's better now, and also an opportunity to save some ash that are still providing function through their canopy and screening. So an example of that might be to, on the west side of the creek where access is hard and we're already managing buckthorn, we might want to take those ash. On this side near Minnehaha, where trees are probably pretty important for screening of these homes, and they're quite accessible in the future, maybe we leave those ash. But different types of strategies and reasons for those strategies, especially as we know more what the actual tree impacts are from the construction, will be discussed and developed with the project design team. And then there is a opportunity on April 3rd where a joint session of Council and Park Commission meet, where we will be discussing specifically the ash tree management strategy, and I will send that invitation out to the board as it gets closer. This is the first check-in of design development. when we were at concept design approval, what we said is the first thing we'll look at is, optimizing creek alignment, especially with respect to conserving trees, and develop some more details around stormwater management, and that's what we're here reporting on tonight. No actions required. The design team's gonna continue to work, and we scheduled to be back in May, which is formal action by council and the Board of Managers to approve that 60% design. The design process for the park shelter building will be initiated by the city, they think in February. And then for the playground design in August. And those construction processes would be following this phase of construction later in 2019. The draft cost estimates before you are what we reported at the end of concept design. Those are not updated at this stage. We do have updated information. We know that the stormwater management concept proposed is in line with the estimate we have here. The creek restoration estimate is also close, just on the face of it, about $200,000 less, but there's still a lot of unknowns and project development work regarding soils and other things that still need to be determined. So the cost estimate we think right now is still the best available information. Regarding grants, last year we did go through a round of grant applications with these granting agencies, and were not awarded funds. I've met with them and discussed our application and the project, and I feel that with design level details, this project is going to be a good application this year. The first of these applications comes due in April with Met Council. That grant application particularly favors kind of the stormwater treatment train approach and demonstrative stormwater management practices, which our design is doing. So I think we will have a strong application there. The Conservation Partners Legacy Grant Program application administered by DNR, we met with, and they really liked the application. That grant program, which is kind of a subset of LaSard SAM's funding, has a $575,000 cap. So what that's kind of pointing us to do is perhaps separating out the construction documents, how we bid the project with the natural resources work separated from the initial excavating and construction work. Laura and I are going to talk more internally about that and with our design team, and kind of use lessons learned from Cottageville Park and other projects, and thinking about what the optimal way is to manage that work with the specialized contractors, and then also give us the best opportunity for outside funding as well. Our communications program, Telly and Sarah and the City of Edina's communications staff have a public communications plan for the project, and we are coordinating on disseminating information out throughout project design. The district is doing email updates at least monthly that folks can subscribe to, similar to Splash. I understand the Board of Managers are going to be or are already subscribed. And then we are also, through the City of Edina's website, there's an opportunity to submit online comments through a form, and then the city shares those with us, and we have received a few of those so far too. Going forward from here, we will be having a pre-application meeting with regulatory agencies, looking at February for that. Our technical team will have some specific work sessions on the park shelter terrace and terrace building itself, how that's situated with the new bridge. and trails and materials for those. And then another work session, probably 4 weeks out at least, on the schematic plan for vegetation restoration and including the landscaping plan. What's in the works that you'll hear more about at the 60% design is the project efficacy monitoring plan. I think this is the first time the district's really taken a real deliberate, proactive approach to creating a monitoring plan at the head of a project, where we are defining our measures of success. For Arden, we're looking at, within the creek itself, the geomorphology and the biology within the corridor, and then the public use experience measures of success. Based on that, we looked at the data that we have, the data gaps, and next year we'll be collecting data. Eric Fieldseth from Research and Monitoring took the lead in writing that plan. It's in final draft form right now, and I'll be ready to present that at 60% design, but we are thinking about that, as well as the long-term operations and maintenance and stewardship plan, which will begin to take shape as we get closer to 60% design and have a better definition of the project. So those are things in the works.
Thank you. Are there questions for her, Manager Miller?
How much creek are we adding with the remanders?
The total creek restoration is about 2,000 feet, and we're adding about 400, I understand.
I just got one comment. This thing could have got out of hand really easy because there was a lot of apprehension in the community and a lot of misinformation and a campaign going on that was kind of startling with the efforts to kill the project. I think the process that you and the city have developed is really a model, because everybody's informed and feels comfortable that they're knowing what's going on. And I think it has a lot to do with your personal professional demeanor and your interpersonal skills that has really made this thing possible, because it could have really, even the public meetings could have got out of hand, but your ability to manage controversy was really skillful. I want to commend you for that.
Thank you, Manager Miller. Thank you.
A question, who will be doing the E. coli sampling and testing?
Our research and monitoring staff.
Thank you. Manager Olson?
When we are asked by these grant opportunities, the question, I'd like to know how we answer this question. When someone says, well, if we don't give you the $500,000, are you still going to do the project? How do we respond to that?
I haven't had to respond to that yet, but I think the response is that there is not full funding for the project in place by the district or the city. The district levied half the project funds for our 2018 budget, and then 60% will come in May as we are looking at our 2019 budget. And every year the Board of Managers evaluates funding opportunities based on resource need, opportunity, our partners, and urgency, at a high level. And so those funding determinations will be made at that time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Manager Loftus?
Renee, the 4 ponds that were on the original plan, are they gone in this plan? Am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, so the ponds, we're depicting areas for stormwater management, not necessarily ponds per se. And in the new plan,
Almost
This
switched.
treatment is just
Accomplished a
stabilized.
different way.
Yep, there's actually no treatment accomplished, but stabilization of the drainage path to the creek.
So is there any loss of our goals in?
The primary
Removing those?
treatment opportunity is this one that is still being pursued and is part of the plan.
It's just being done differently.
So we said up to 100 acres of stormwater. This, I think between these two are 30 acres. And this one already has some pre-treatment. And this one, the trade-offs of treatment versus really getting into that woods to accomplish some level of treatment that's not there today, staff didn't feel was appropriate.
And I heard you say that there were some private residents that perhaps didn't want
Way up at the
some of the
top.
work done, so we
Way up there.
approached
Yes.
it differently. But overall, are the stormwater goals still being
Yes.
met? Okay.
Yeah, underground storage and all the swales, the whole different way to do it.
But accomplishes the
Mr.
same
Meehan.
thing.
Right.
Manager White, Manager Loftus, just because I like to talk about stormwater. When we looked at the sites and where we could get the biggest bang for the buck, when we looked at doing some sort of stormwater management up here, as Renee pointed out, a lot of disturbance, trees, not as big of a drainage area. And if we looked at the pot of money we could get to achieve our stormwater goals, we could get way more bang for the buck by focusing up on this area. So that's where we started to concentrate, really treating this water up here.
Okay.
And being able, that allows us the greatest ability to go above our goals. What we'd
So
seen.
it just shifted.
Yeah, so yeah.
Okay,
so
the
we look at it as a
priority
whole.
area.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're like, all right, this is the sweet spot we can start to work on.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Ms. Clark, on the northwest side of the park, the first concept plan has two trails, and now there's one. Tell me about the thinking there. Did I describe it well enough?
Yes.
Here.
There, yeah. There's a light pole, this is kind of a slope, and there's some really nice trees in here. So we're just swinging the trail kind of in, and it's one trail and not two. We're just kind of responding to kind of the existing kind of slope and space here, and
Okay.
yes, it's one swoosh in and not a two in.
Thank you. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. Item 12.2, Sherwood Planning MOU, Ms. Clark and Ms. Quinn.
Chair White, Board of Managers, we will be giving you a briefing on a proposed memorandum of understanding with the City of Shorewood. There's no action requested tonight. This is for review. I'm presenting with Heidi Quinn, permitting technician. As opportunities for early coordination with our communities often come through the permitting department, I am co-managing this work with Heidi, so we will tag team our presentation tonight. First, by way of recap, at the December 21st Planning and Policy Committee, staff provided a preliminary schedule and process for implementing a strategic action plan to carry out the district's organizational strategies, which are developing high-impact capital projects that make positive changes on the landscape within the watershed, and changing the land use and water policy environment to increase early value-added partnerships with public and private development, public planning and policy. A priority for the strategic action plan is actually developing this land use policy plan that identifies policy and procedural changes locally and regionally to further the integration of land use and water resources planning, which leads to successful implementation of projects on the landscape that have a positive impact on water, natural systems, and communities, as we've seen. On December 21st, we provided 2 examples of initiatives in this regard. First was from Anna Brown and her coordination with the City of Victoria on their comprehensive water resources plan, comprehensive plan for their city to create a water and natural resources framework within their plan that informs future land use planning and growth represented in their comp plan. The second was this opportunity with the City of Shorewood, and here the city invited the district as a technical resource to co-plan local infrastructure improvements in the city. They've paused their road CIP and taken a step back, recognizing a handful of local drainage issues that have persisted in the community for a long time, and where there have been several kind of independent studies and attempts to look at how to solve those in various ways. Staff provided kind of a high-level framework of how we might co-plan together, and tonight we're here to present a draft memorandum of understanding specifically for how that will work. So while the district seeks to plan and integrate our work with our communities, we, through our comp plan, said we need to focus and have identified those areas of focus as Minnehaha Creek, the 6 Mile Creek Halstead Bay subwatershed, and Painter Creek subwatershed. The latter 2 both are strategies for Lake Minnetonka. We also said in our plan, and the specifics are outlined in the LGU section, but that will be responsive district-wide to opportunities as they may arise to coordinate our efforts in various ways. So I'll let Heidi talk about how we are doing that with the City of Shorewood.
Thank you, Renee. President White, Board of Managers. So kind of as Renee mentioned, the City of Shorewood is an example of early coordination with the district that can result in an improved and productive relationship that aims to address a host of local drainage issues in a comprehensive way while incorporating the planning of city infrastructure, parks, and trails. Historically, the district is often in a reactive position to city infrastructure projects. It's very common that we receive permit applications that are very near finalized plans. This results in leaving very limited time to incorporate requested changes without increasing the project cost, and sometimes potentially, unfortunately, causes delay to construction timelines. So recently, as Renee recapped, the city invited the district as a technical resource to look at how water can be leveraged as an asset while also solving local drainage and flooding concerns in the western portion of the city is the main focus. So this slide just kind of shows where in the district that's located. So it's the western portion of Shorewood is west of Excelsior, north of Highway 7. And then kind of zooming in a little bit more. This is kind of a screenshot that kind of showcases the host of longstanding concerns that the city has that are also very public concerns as well. So identifying the areas where there's concerns with high groundwater, poor drainage, identifying a couple ditches that are not functioning as they could be, and poor infiltration in some areas as well. And just to give you a little bit more references also, because I think Renee's going to talk about it a little bit more. So if we look at the western portion of Shorewood, so here's Highway 7, Highway 41 is
Way to the right.
right
about that.
41 would be, over here.
Yep.
Freeman Park is kind of the main park in Shorewood. This is Eureka, so like the intersection of like Smithtown and 19 and right of the City Hall. This is kind of right over here. And the Grant Lorenz channel, it's been noted for causing serious erosion control issues. And then these are kind of some more local identified areas that the city has brought to that they've been kind of trying to incorporate for several years now, I think. And so really pausing that CIP and bringing us at the table as a technical resource to kind of do a more comprehensive approach to it.
The draft memorandum of understanding is in your packet. It's not a legally binding document, but serves to align our understanding of how we're going to work together as we proceed. The general framework is the city is leading the development of a systems plan for their road CIP and the improvements that were identified on the previous slide. The components of this plan generally is our strategies to address those issues in coordination with their future infrastructure improvements. It's intended to have a prioritized implementation plan and a funding plan. The district would be a technical resource to the city as the plan's developed, specifically assessing where water resource improvements can be made part of the plan and maximized. We will be able to coordinate with regulatory agencies and guide the design of identified strategies in the plan to better align with existing regulation. Where there are water resource improvement opportunities that intersect with those strategies, we could seek outside funding and potentially fund a solution for improving water resources if the board prioritizes that in our CIP. So what this clearly does is define roles and responsibilities and gives us the opportunity to plan long-term our investments based on competing priorities for investments in clean water. The benefits of this early coordination to the city and the district are, the streamlined regulatory process. Heidi said, she's familiar firsthand with permit applications that are shovel-ready and the contractors on site, and responding to regulations late in the game costs time and money in delays in design costs. This type of coordination can leverage better water resource and natural resource outcomes than just a road project. And as we've seen firsthand with our work over the last 10 years, this type of co-planning of water and infrastructure benefits both the built and natural environments, and that's kind of our mission. And then this proposed framework, again, is just to manage expectations of our partners. Next steps, City Council had a briefing of the opportunity by the city engineer, consulting engineer, January 8th. They're going to be discussing it in more detail at a work session on January 31st and be requested to take action on the MOU at their meeting February 12th. And that sets our board action for requested action for February 22nd.
Yep.
So, questions? Manager Miller?
I didn't anticipate the slide, but this follows the new scheme of,
Vision and mission, right to the letter.
except there's something in the back of my mind that's saying, are we getting sucked into funding what would otherwise be local assessments or general obligations of the city? Mm-hmm. And I think, I'm sure that's not entered anybody's mind, but we've got to make sure that we're not substituting our resources for theirs. And because I think the idea is a great one, but there's problems could develop and whose responsibility to fund some of these things are, and especially if there's local assessments involved.
Thus, a well-written MOU.
Paragraph 7.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's not binding, we were told, so.
Well, paragraph 7 says we're not promising to produce
Yeah.
funds, yeah.
Okay.
And just to expand on that, Chair White, if it's okay,
Go ahead.
Board of Managers, the second leading, most emphasized point in our meetings has been that we can't promise funding, and we want to clearly not promise funding. But after a plan is developed, the way to get funding is by coordinating early, co-planning, and if such opportunity arises, and as I sort of talked about a project prioritization framework in our budgeting, there is a resource need, an opportunity which is prioritized against the other opportunities for investment in the watershed, then a project may receive funding. So that I greatly appreciate that point, and that is something that this type of early coordination aims to address.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you on this item on the 22nd. Item 13.1, the Administrator's Report. Mr. Erdahl.
Thank you, President White and managers. First, kind of a little bit of a business item is to find a date that works for a board retreat coming up. I had circulated an email to managers back on the 16th. And kind of the two dates that seem to surface as most available to most, although I know we don't have, two members are not in attendance this evening, would be Friday, the February 9th. And we had talked about doing a noon to 4 p.m. meeting. I know one manager thought a morning meeting that day would be better, and I know another manager would have a conflict in the morning. So that the noon to 4 p.m. time frame on the 9th. And the other one would be a Thursday that we don't currently have a board meeting scheduled on, and that would be Thursday, February 15th from 5 to 9 p.m. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to kind of have a brief poll or to see if those dates or if those calendars, or how you'd like to direct me to kind of finalize and select a date.
Have you heard back from most of us?
From everybody that's here tonight, I've heard back from. From the two that aren't here, I've not heard from.
Well, we get to vote for them.
I think so.
Either of those work for me, the morning or the afternoon of February 9th, and then the 15th in the evening. So I'm open for any of that.
So our weigh-in did not have a clear outcome for this.
Right.
I like the daytime idea, the Friday afternoon, rather than a Saturday or Thursday night.
If someone preferred a morning, I probably said afternoon. I can do a morning if it's.
I think you said that afternoon work in the morning did, but I think Manager Becker thought that maybe if starting at 9 a.m. that day might be
I can do
preferable
that.
to the afternoon. So
I can do that. I can start at 9. If that
Would 9 work here?
I think so.
conflicts us. we'll make
All
it
right,
work.
then I move we have a retreat on the 9th at 9 a.m. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right,
All right, got that
not
down.
9 till noon?
9
1?
till
9 till 1 maybe. Well, maybe finish with lunch instead of starting with lunch.
Okay. All right.
Where are we going to repeat?
here.
I think here, unless people would like to find another facility, I think during the daytime this would work. I'm up for suggestions. I know we've typically done
the
retreats
last
at
two.
some other location,
We've had the last two at the
the
Presbyterian.
base
Hall.
centers, yeah.
Or we can meet at the City Hall.
City Hall too.
Yeah, that's a nice meeting room there.
So, look for an off-site.
Say tentative City Hall.
Okay, I will confirm the location. And there's just a few quick updates here. One is that I know that Eric Fieldseth from Research and Monitoring staff had attended the DNR Roundtable. It's an annual event earlier this month. He made some good connections with some DNR staff and to further our efforts, especially related to habitat restoration and carp management. And I know he's kind of continuing to pursue an opportunity to coordinate those efforts to kind of streamline and improve efficiency for licensing, commercial fishing licensing for carp removal and some of those types of things. He's specifically looking for our projects in the 6 Mile Halstead base of Watershed, but I know there's been some other watershed districts and other areas that have looked for kind of some improvements to some of those rules and regulations too, so I think that could have a broader impact as well. Darren Lochner from our education staff and I met last week with a group in Wayzata that had been working on the lake effect. They're starting to put together some program planning for a summer STEM camp for children, and we've kind of been emphasized that we're not really focused on delivering programs, but this is being developed by the sailing club there, and also the YMCA is really going to be the predominant runner of the camp through their Camp Christmas Tree program affiliated with that, and they're looking for opportunities to have some technical assistance and some different types of support, so we'll keep tracking that. The next meeting with that group is on February 5th. And also next week, Laura Damjancic and myself will meeting with the city of Orono. We'll have an update on where they are with some of their planning for the Big Island Nature Park, and our course goal is to make sure any plans fully comply with our conservation easement and the mutually agreed upon management plan. So that will be on Wednesday next week. And then just another note, on Monday next week, our staff, Anna Brown and I think maybe others, will be at the City of Victoria. They have a comp plan open house scheduled for that evening, and we'll have some posters up with our Washerman West Park plan as it is now, and this will be kind of one of the early opportunities to really to share that information with residents and gain feedback from them too. So our staff will be there on Monday evening. And most of the staff will be gone tomorrow for a staff retreat. I think I mentioned at our last meeting they'll be at the Arboretum kind of looking at some kind of future planning and teaming efforts. So with that, unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Thank you. Metro Mod, we had good turnout there, I understand.
Yeah, we were in force. We had 2 managers, and James and Becky. We had the evening was dedicated primarily to the first half of the meeting, detailing every member's projects and successes in 2017. So we went around the room and talked about that, and then major plans and initiatives for 18. And when it came to our turn, we had James present that on our behalf. So we covered all the things we've been working on and what we are planning. And then we had our first presentation from Emily Javins, the new MOD Executive Director. And she gave us a presentation on her background, as well as her emphasis on legislative initiatives and things like that she's planning on doing. And then later we had all the agency association presentations, most of them very brief, a lot of new faces, and since Manager Becker's wife retired, we do have new people taking over. And then metro area meeting for the watershed-based funding pilot program was then presented, and we saw a detailed version of that tonight in our committee meeting. So with that, we close the meeting.
Thank you, Manager Miller.
I'd just like to make a comment. I was really impressed with the new hire for the executive director. Yeah. She's really got a terrific background, and she's incredibly articulate and long-winded. She's really comprehensive in her.
But in her engineering past, she worked with James and Becky, so she's familiar with our team already.
I think it was really a good move.
Yeah, good hire, I think. Well, thank you very much. Last Friday was the a mod board meeting, and because I was still ill, I attended by telephone, which is a terrible way to attend a board meeting, I'm just going to say. But, I'm sorry?
Could you hear anything?
They muted me so they couldn't hear me because it was staticky, they said. Right, sure. Anyway, a few things. We talked a lot about legislative priorities. In addition to doing a rough ranking, which was sent out an email to all of us, Ms. Javins is sending out, she's asking each board member to say what that individual person's top 3 priorities are, and she's really trying to get that honed down a little better and really have more of a handle on what is being lobbied, because as Mr. Bone said, a lot of it's opportunistic, and we want to be sure that we get that followed very quickly in the session, so Emily will be on top of that. The next meeting will be at the March legislative, the day of the legislature and breakfast. So there'll be a chance to touch base about that again. The new office is in the Riley Purgatory, Bluff Creek Watershed District offices. And there are some openings coming up on various boards. Gene Tiedemann, I think, I forget his name, is leaving the Bowser board as a mod rep from non-metro. So they'll be replacing him. There may be an opening on the Clean Water Council, representing watershed districts. And on the mod board, there'll be an opening for Region 3 Metro next year because Craig Leiser will be retiring. So those are things I thought I wanted to report back. We talked about budget and whatnot, but those are very interesting things, the legislation. We will now go into, or I'd like a motion to go into closed session to discuss the Minnesota ice matter.
So moved.
Manager Olson, is there a second?
Second.
Manager Becker, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. We're now back in open session. The meeting is adjourned.